Okay. Good morning from here in Chicago. My name is Tim Stewart. I run Visual Decisions, Inc. We are a solutions firm that provides a combination of the smart factory and the lean factory to our customers, where we look at implementing some of the latest Industry 4.0 technologies, but really integrate those with process improvement and cultural adoption with the customer. The way that we look at it is like a Fitbit. I've been wearing a Fitbit for about 7 years now. I really haven't lost any weight. And the reason for that is I haven't changed my behaviors. So we look at the shop floor as being the same way. We can implement any of these technologies we want. But if we don't have people do something differently tomorrow than they do today, if we don't change those behaviors out on the shop floor, then investing in the technology won't provide the value. So we really have a complete focus on both sides of those things. So what we're here to talk about today is augmented reality for manufacturing. And we'll go through an overview of both some of the applications of augmented reality, as well as really how to take advantage of those solutions to drive value on the shop floor. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to start off here with a quote from the ARC Advisory Group. By implementing augmented reality solutions on the factory floor, manufacturers have established an entirely new avenue for improving the key performance indicators of manual assembly and maintenance operations. And the reason I think that this is important is that I've been involved in lean manufacturing for a number of years now, starting with when Toyota was a customer of mine all the way back in the late 90s. And we've done a lot with both manual methods as well as data collection from the shop floor and tying that into the process of continuous improvement and so forth. And we've taken a lot of the low-hanging fruit that was there, but there are certain things that augmented reality can provide that just weren't accessible in any other way. And we'll go through some of those things today. So when we look at the industrial markets, there are a lot of pressures that are increasing much more rapidly than ever before. Worker skills gaps, there is a tremendous aging process in place in manufacturing operations, where we have a lot of people that are existing out on the shop floor that are approaching retirement age and so forth. And it's often difficult to recruit the younger generation to step in and fill those gaps. There's just not as much interest in those types of jobs as there once was. Product and process complexity is ever increasing. And with a lot of the things that companies are doing to add, smart products, into their portfolio and so forth, that is increasing faster than it ever has before. And then we live in the age of instant gratification for end customers as well as business customers, where the customer demands are continually increasing and driving additional requirements on the suppliers. So when we look at AR opportunities across the industrial enterprise, I work as a partner with PTC and their Vuforia solution in this space. And they did a survey of their customers, and what they found was that across design, selling and marketing, operating the product itself, so the smart connected products that I mentioned a minute ago, service, and then training and manufacturing, a very significant portion of the opportunity was on the training and manufacturing side. And some of the value drivers that are out there in manufacturing and why this is getting such broad adoption within manufacturing at this time, categorized in 3 separate ways: improving workforce efficiency, increasing the quality and the yield, and reducing the operational costs. And I'm not going to go through all of those right now, but if you stick around at the end of the presentation, once I've done kind of the formal presentation, I'm going to go through a number of slides afterwards that really detail how all of these different value drivers can be achieved. So some of the operational challenges that manufacturers face, if you look at creating operating instructions and so forth and how you deliver those to the shop floor, I've been involved in a number of initiatives where we try to put shop floor displays out there, you put books out there and so forth. And really, there's a couple of issues. One is that creating these work instructions, creating these guidelines and so forth is very expensive to produce. It's very hard to keep the paper-based ones up to date on the shop floor. It's fairly inefficient, and it's very costly in terms of training and so forth. And then no matter how hard you try to do this, it's always separate from the process itself. So if I'm an operator and I'm looking at, and I want to look at these work instructions, I have to look away from the process itself to look at the book or to look at the screen where these are displayed, and it's taking me out of the work. And so as an operator, I'm focused on my work, and then I go away, I look at the screen or the book, and I come back to the work. I have to refine my place. I have to make the adjustment in my mind for what I was looking at over on the screen or in the book to what I'm seeing in front of me. And it's just not a smooth process in all cases. AR really helps address these challenges. It can be a very compelling alternative. So as we look at this screen, what we're seeing is that I don't have to look away from the process itself anymore. As I look at the machine, I'm seeing the information that I have to see right there on the screen in front of me as I'm looking at the machine itself. So I'm still completely focused, and I'm in one mode as I'm interacting with both the instructions as well as the machine itself. And even as I move my hand into that process, my hand will be potentially interacting with the elements that are out there, both physical and virtual. And so it can be very, very highly effective in terms of training. It can be much better in terms of documenting the operating procedures and so forth, but it's also something where the focus of the operator can stay within the process itself without having to shift away to look at a book or a screen. So in terms of how AR empowers the frontline workers, really, again, the focus is on that workforce productivity, the quality and the yield, and the operational costs. So in terms of why I'm partnering with PTC in this space, this is a quote from IDC talking about how most companies are just getting started with AR. PTC actually acquired a company that had the Vuforia software, and it's really an outstanding development within this space, and they are truly one of the experts and pioneers in the area of augmented reality. So in terms of the scalable solutions for manufacturing, you want the expert guidance so that you can have those experts provide their expertise, and you want to be able to capture that knowledge of these aging workers before they leave the workforce. Being able to put those 3D work instructions in place, being able to do the enhanced training of your workforce and so forth. And then also being able to provide remote assistance is something that can be very highly leveraged within a company, dramatically reduce travel budgets if nothing else, and also provide much faster response than having somebody fly out to assist the local resources with the work. So from that expert guidance perspective, if we look at the fast and easy ability to provide that information from that expert to the people that need to learn this, it's very easy to capture the what the expert is doing. So basically they just, as they're wearing those glasses, they just do the process as they normally would, and they can actually give verbal instructions to the process to take pictures to enhance the instructions that go along with what they're doing and so forth. And it really is a fairly seamless process that you can put these glasses or give these glasses to somebody, give them the software, give them really minimal training, and then they'll be able to create these work instructions on their own. So it's democratizing how this gets done. All right, I was having issues with this video before, and hopefully this will play and you'll be able to hear the video as well. So the next step is looking at the 3D work instructions and how these can actually be used in assembly operations or other operations, actually as the workers are doing the process itself. And we have a number of customers that are using things like this for instance in pick and place operations, where you can highlight the bins that the operator should pick from, and what product should go on, or what item should go on the product next. And this can be very good in assembly operations where you have multiple products coming down the line after one another, and the operator has to know which pieces go on the product that's going, the individual SKU that's in front of them at that time. And so you can actually highlight the bins that they should pick from one at a time to show them, grab this piece next, and you can show the work instruction for how to put that on the machine, which piece next, and so forth. And so extremely good for doing that type of thing. It's also good for quality checks and being able to show how to do those quality checks in process as well. And I apologize for the lack of sound on this particular video, but as you can see, what we have an expert that's authoring the work instructions here, and then we have an actual frontline worker that is going through and is seeing those work instructions side by side with how to operate the process, which pieces should go in next, and so forth. And so they're actually able to see that as they're going through, and now you can see multiple stations all utilizing those glasses and doing the same thing. There's also the ability to do remote assistance, and this is something that is tremendously useful for companies that have shared resources at a corporate level, multiple different facilities, spread out across the country or the world, where the expert can utilize a phone, utilize a tablet, as you see in that picture, to actually show the frontline worker or maintenance person exactly what they should be doing. I've had customers that are interacting with their machine vendors in this way as well, where they'll start a session of this with the machine vendor to get instructions on how to actually fix the machine that they're working on. And so they can get that outside assistance helping them as well to address the different issues without having those people actually fly in and stay in hotels and pay for meals and everything else. Not to mention, scheduling that and waiting a week or two before they can show up. And then for training, some of the tools that we've looked at obviously can also be used offline for training, for new workers, for cross training, for people that are moving from one area to another. Can be, getting them up to speed much more quickly than they otherwise would going through traditional training mechanisms. And then just looking again at the value that can be created by utilizing these technologies. You can improve the operator efficiency. You can look at reducing the cost of downtime, improving safety and compliance, modernizing training, and really increasing worker satisfaction as well. And a couple of those last ones that I want to, particularly emphasize, we'll talk a lot about the dollar value that you can create here, but from a safety perspective and a risk avoidance from compliance perspective, as you saw in the one video where the worker, as they were moving to the one machine, had a safety warning that popped up and they had to dismiss that safety warning to proceed. Those are the types of things that can really, really enhance the safety within the organization and really provide you with that additional layer of, safety within your organization and reduce OSHA recordables, incidents, and everything else, and just provide a better, safer environment for your workers. And then also from a worker satisfaction point of view, having some of these tools it's just cool. And we've really seen a lot of workers, especially, I hate to be stereotypical, but especially younger workers that really embrace this type of thing. And it helps make the job much more attractive for a lot of the people within the organization. From a dollar perspective, you can see some of the numbers here, and we'll go into some more detail about that on the next screen. So working with a pharmaceutical customer, PTC was able to look at $27 million in potential value for each factory within the organization. And they're primarily doing this through increasing the asset utilization, reducing defects, and then decreasing labor costs as well. And a lot of that decreased labor costs was spending money on having experts give training to new users, where if you have a fair amount of turnover within the facility, those new workers, you're paying them to be non-productive during training time. You have to pay somebody to give that training and so forth. And typically those are the experts, and you're pulling them out of the manufacturing process. And so there are a lot of things that happen there, but also you can make the workers just generally more efficient as well. And so you can increase throughput. You can reduce cost of compliance because people are better adhering to the standard operating procedures and so forth. And then you just have decreased scrap and unscheduled downtime because of that increased efficiency as well. And so if we look at a few particular examples at Global Foundries, their challenge was that the critical procedure was performed incorrectly by inexperienced operators. And so they created step-by-step instructions for the setup and changeover within Expert Capture. So they just had, the people that run that process the best go and do that. And if you have a lot of variance in downtime, if you have a lot of variance in how long setups take between different operators and so forth, that is an opportunity to utilize these types of technologies to have the people that run that process the best capture how they do it, and then share that information, share those best practices with everybody else. So we talk a lot about best practices and standard work and standard operating procedures within manufacturing. This is really a way to capture that and drive it throughout the organization. And so you can see how much of a reduction there was in training time. And I think that bottom point on the left is key, where it's 10 times faster documenting standard operating procedures than it was without these technologies. Because if you have to go into a Microsoft Word document and you have to put in pictures and you have to arrange everything, and then you have to type up everything that you're doing at every stage and be explicit enough for all of that to be interpreted correctly by somebody else that's reading those, it takes a long time. If you're able to take a video and just annotate that, it's 10 times faster. At BAE, you saw the examples of that in the video where we had the people assembling the different products, and then even more use out on the shop floor in terms of different operations as well. But they were able to capture those instructions and use that to train the people to do this complex assembly work in a much more rapid way than they had been before. And they also were able to dramatically increase the quality because the workers had better training, because they had this assistance as they were out there on the shop floor as well. And so what we can see is that they had a 30% improvement in the amount of time that it took to do the training, and then a 50% improvement in the number of defects within assembly as well. At Bharat Forge, the experts needed to visit the shop floor to resolve operations, maintenance, and quality issues, and the experts might not be available within the plant. And so this is one where that remote assistance really came into the forefront, being able to have the frontline workers call the experts and get instant support at the touch of a finger. And you have the corporate experts that are able to provide support. Even within large plants, if you can rapidly call an engineer, instead of having to wait for them to walk out to the machine to give assistance, you can start a quick virtual session with that engineer, and they can instantly provide support without the machine being down waiting for them to get out to the shop floor. At AGCO, some of the scales were very complex to install. It was not possible to bring those into a virtual or into a physical classroom so that people could do that. So you had to take the machines down in order to actually do the training. And the other option was to use drawings and basically try to train people to do this with just the drawing. And so what we're able to do is to create a virtual twin of this process in Vuforia Studio, and from a very immersive basis, be able to train people on that virtual copy of the equipment. And so you can see the quote from their learning and development director there, that they were able to create those step-by-step instructions and cut training time from 5 days to 2 days. And the dealers themselves are asking for more products to have that similar training with the augmented reality, because it's just so much more efficient that way. And another application of this is if you do have a large dealer or distributor network for your products, this can be an extremely effective tool for helping to train those people to install and service your products correctly. So that is kind of the primary part of the presentation. If you have questions, please put them into the Q&A. But what I'll go through next is a set of slides that really kind of go through the details of those different value areas from before and walk through some of the different ways that the augmented reality solutions can provide value. I'll send out a copy of the presentation for anyone that requests it. And so if you have to get to a 10:30 meeting or a meeting at the bottom of the hour here, feel free to jump off and we can walk through this separately. But these are just very wordy slides, so I pulled this out separate. But if you do want to stick around, so looking through these different categories, we had reducing waste as part of the 3 main buckets of value. And within there, we had scrap and rework. And some of the addressable causes that we can look at for scrap and rework, you have to think about what are the main causes of scrap within your operations. How much of that is due to human errors and how much of that is actually driven by the machine itself. So you may have processes that are not tightly controlled, and you have to look at the machine causes in those particular cases. But an awful lot of companies have operations where the scrap is primarily due to human error. And where it's due to human error, you can look at what are the most common errors that are causing that scrap and rework. Is it poor quality information? Is it out of date information? Is it a lack of adherence to the standard operating procedures or the standard work? Is it, you have new workers that are trying to do that process that just aren't really up to speed yet and so forth. You may have variances between how different people run the operation and so forth. And all of those different causes can be assisted through some of the things that we've talked about and shown so far. And so there's an awful lot of these scrap and rework issues that can be addressed. In addition to some of these things that are just really training based and standard work based, there's the ability to directly address things like I talked about earlier with the assembly operations in the pick and place, where you can actually highlight bins, the appropriate bin for whatever SKU is in front of the worker at that time. You can highlight the bins that they should be picking from and then where on the product that those items should be placed. And so there are additional opportunities such as that as well. I've also seen, for instance, welding operations where there's virtual information being displayed about what % complete that weld is, so that the operator will actually understand and get that feedback directly in front of them, right through virtual display in the weld shield, what % complete the weld actually is, so that they don't stop early or go too far. Unscheduled downtime. So when you look at the causes of unscheduled downtime, you have the number of incidents that are happening, and some of those might be addressable because they're due to human error and so forth. But then you also have how long does the machine stay down for? So it's not just the mean time between failure, but it's also the mean time to respond and the mean time to repair. And with some of these technologies, with the ability to do the remote assistance, to do the remote assistance not only from a completely separate location, but also even within that location, you have the ability to get the mean time to respond and the mean time to repair dramatically reduced. You also have an opportunity to reduce the recurrence because you're able to get those experts more involved, because you have the ability to utilize better standard work in terms of how you address different types of failure modes, where instead of just putting a Band-Aid on the problem, you can have the instructions there for your maintenance crew or your operators, if they're doing the fix, to apply a more permanent fix for that particular problem, and then capture that so that they can then share that with others within the organization. Very powerful in terms of being able to reduce recurrence of issues as well. From a scheduled downtime perspective, the main thing I'm going to talk about here is changeover. I've been to organizations where depending on who is doing the changeover, it could take 2 hours or 6 hours. And there's just a massive variation in the length of time that those changeovers take, as well as once you try to start the process back up again, how long it takes before that operation is back at full speed and producing good parts. And so by, again, doing that expert capture, looking at who runs that changeover the best, capturing what they're doing as they're going through this process, you have a great ability to then share those best practices with the rest of the crew and reduce that variation in the amount of time it takes between who does it and when they're doing it and so forth. There's also the ability, if you're doing something like a SMED process, being able to capture this information virtually and then review it virtually gives the SMED team a huge leg up in really looking at what are the value add parts of the process, where can you kit things and so forth to reduce that amount of time, and really, really helps with that SMED process as well. In terms of reducing waste, looking at the cycle time, again, what I look for here when I work with customers is how much variation is there in throughput or cycle time for that process between who's running the process in that day. Again, I've seen up to a 50% variation in how fast different operators can run a process, and usually that's driven by short stops, or if it's more of a manual process, really how experienced is the operator in doing that job, and how automatic is it and so forth for them. And this is where training can really, really help out quite a bit. Being able to share those best practices, being able to share that visual right there where the operator doesn't have to remove themselves from the process, look at a separate book to review the standard operating procedures, and then come back to the process and try to pick up where they were, and look back and forth to see, okay, where is that nut located over here? And just being able to eliminate those things and being able to stay within the process and retain that focus on the process can help an enormous amount with reducing the cycle times for manual operations. When you think about introducing new products into the plant, there's not only creating the new procedures in the first place, which can be extremely time consuming, and being able to have all the different people that are involved in the process at every single step in the operation for that new product, be able to go through that documentation process, but just being able to share that with everybody that has to run that process. So if you have a cross-trained organization, you might have 20-30 different people that are going to be doing each different operation across different shifts and so forth. And now for every new product, you have to train all of those new people on what that procedure looks like. If you instead have that augmented reality capability, you can train them faster. You can also make sure that as they're doing the process itself, they can get that virtual assistance. In terms of safety and compliance, I talked a little bit about this earlier, but first of all, within your organization, who's responsible for creating and maintaining your compliance documentation, all your ISO documentation and so forth? Or if you're in, for instance, a pharmaceutical industry, your compliance information for, all your validated processes and so forth. Being able to make sure that that documentation stays up to date is a sometimes daunting task, depending on the complexity of the process and the number of different products that you have flowing through and so forth. It can be something where you have multiple full-time people that do nothing but maintain that documentation. And so if you have that kind of complex environment, this is definitely something that you should look at, just from the point of view of being able to, again, democratize, that effort and have the experts, have the ability as they're actually doing the process to capture, what they're doing, so that that can then be shared very easily in the organization, as well as, just creating that documentation to make sure that you're in compliance. from a safety perspective, you know, how do you, I've highlighted here, how do you think that training impacts the number of safety incidents? Are better trained people less at risk for safety incidents? And in general, the answer to that, of course, is going to be yes. The better trained people are, the less they should put themselves at risk. Otherwise, you should look at, you know, what your training program is doing. But, you know, how do you get workers up to that level of safety, and how do you provide those safety protocols and safety information as they're learning the process itself? As you saw in that video, it's tremendously impactful to be able to put those safety warnings directly into that training, so that as they go through that process, they learn right there where those safety hazards really are. Worker attrition costs and so forth. I don't know, how much turnover you have in your facilities today, where you have to deal with attrition cost, but a lot of customers that I work with have an aging workforce that they're looking at, having a massive brain drain from the shop floor in terms of people that are experts in these processes that are due to retire or leave to other opportunities or whatever it may be. And then you have you face the cost of bringing new people in, getting them up to speed and so forth. I have customers that would like to add another shift that just can't because they're having difficulty recruiting people to actually work on the shop floor these days. It just doesn't seem to be that attractive a job to a lot of the younger generation. And so how do you make that more attractive? How do you keep people more engaged? How do you keep people feeling like this is something that is kind of a world-class job to be in? And having tools like this, again, it's just cool. It really helps to make the jobs more attractive, more fun for people as they're going through. This one is obvious. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the training time. It should be obvious how it's just much more intuitive and faster to learn this way than it is, through traditional classroom environments or, reading manuals or things like that. And so the one thing I will touch on is typically for the training, you're going to have to pull an expert to do that training and show the new people how to do that. And so when you think about your training costs, it's not only keeping the new people, out of the operation for however long the training takes, but it's also taking the experts out of the process and having them have to, do that particular task to get the new people up to speed. For new hire productivity, it's really, the same thing, but, just how long does it take a new hire to reach full productivity? And if you do a lot of cross training in your organization to, address, different elements of fatigue and so forth, how do you get that work up to speed, not only on, a single operation, but across multiple different processes within the plant? So that was the talk for today. I thank you all for attending, and I think that everybody stayed for that last part and those very, very wordy slides. So I thank you all very much. If you have questions, please reach out to me, tim@visualdecisions.com, or that's my phone number right there. I will probably reach out to all of you with an email to just see, how you're using AR or how you think you might be able to use augmented reality within your facilities, and how we might be able to help out with that. So once again, thank you all and have a great day. Bye-bye.